Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, so you want to build Roxanne? Well, I have a deck for you. This is a budget list. It comes out to be $100. As you can tell from the tags, this is a artifact budget control, extra combats, and token deck. I like to jam a lot of themes into one deck, especially when you have a commander with this much text on it. Usually what that means, the more text you see in a card, the more play there is with it, and you could get a lot of sub-themes in a commander. Especially when you're on a budget, you get pretty creative about things that you play. So you're here to learn how you could play this commander, and you probably got this in your pre-release since that was last weekend. This list should help you have a nice start, and if you want to build from it, you want to keep it as is, that's up to you. She herself is a control piece. Every time she ECBs or attacks, you make a meteorite. The Vomit Comet! Which is an old school magic card. It was 5 mana to cast, does 2 damage or something, taps for any mana. The nice thing about her bottom ability is whenever you tap an artifact token for mana, you produce an additional of that mana. So it basically turns your meteorites into, 2 mana instead of just 1. It also affects other artifact tokens. That includes treasures and power stones. If you wanted to do a power stone version and do a affinity deck, that would also be a pretty fun and gnarly way to play this. I went with a more control-y kind of build, so I'm going to talk about just the synergy pieces just to save time, and if people want to see the list, I'll include that in a link in the description below. If I do talk about card advantage, removal, ramp, it's because it also offers a synergistic part. Hell to pay. Now this is a removal piece, but because if you sink extra mana into this spell, you get to create that many treasure tokens, i.e. stronger, treasure tokens. Great Train Heist, this is an extra combat spell. You want extra combats with because it obviously enables you to get an additional meteorite. The nice thing about the meteorites is you could plink off your opponent's defenses. You make it so her attacks are more efficient. You kill off the smaller creatures, hopefully that buys you an in to get a safe attack off. It also makes treasures, so it's like a bit of a 2-for-1 card. And then if you want to make your commander even more difficult to kill, you can give it a stat increase in first strike. Tome of Legends. So there's a particular issue I came across in Red and Green, is that the card advantage isn't all too efficient. Because I'm going to be running a lot of big haymakers and this stuff, I don't want to advertise what's coming to them. Like normally when I play Red, I love impulse effects like Reckless Impulse and Ren's Resolve, but I didn't want to do that because if I hit one of my big mana spells, I'm going to be drawing way too much aggression my way, and I'd rather have my big finishers be a surprise. Or I don't want to be stuck with my win conditions in exile when I need them to close out games. So I specifically avoided impulse effects because of that. I had to dig for some less than efficient card advantage, and I specifically wanted it to go into my hand without giving any information. And Tome of Legends does that just fine. Since I'm going into extra combats, I should have no problem consistently keeping counters on this. Jai's Immolating Inferno is also a good X spell commander. In my version, since I'm operating on a budget, I'm just taking the best of each world and rolling it into one place, and I prefer building that way. I want consistency and I want power. I want it all. Even on a budget, there's no reason to pigeonhole yourself into an archetype if the card is just good, and Jai's Immolating Inferno lets you finish people off in the late game effectively. Curse of Bounty. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, you get to untap all non-land permanents you control, i.e. your meteorites. The meteorites come in tapped, so it's a bit of a bummer. You won't be able to use them the turn that you play them, unless you pair it with Curse of Bounty here to ramp a ton. The only downside is this is symmetrical for 2 of your opponents. If they attack that person, they get to untap their non-land permanents as well. My advice to you is enchant the strongest player, and then you'll create a bit of a separation between them and you. Idol Oblivion, you're consistently making a token every turn, the meteorite token. So you can consistently get a draw piece off of this. Comet Storm, this is another one of your win conditions. You sink X into it, and then for every time you kick it, you could choose multiple targets. If you have 3 opponents left in the game, you'll kick it 2 times, and then sink X, and then you'll shoot your opponents to death with this. Magda, the Horde Master, this is a new card from Outlaws of Thunder Junction as well. Whenever you commit a crime, you create a treasure token, and it happens once a turn, sadly. But committing a crime is when you target an opponent, anything they control or their graveyard. I.e., every time you have a rock and you plink something off, that counts as committing a crime. So you're guaranteed to get that at least once a turn. I also included a bunch of instants that are removal burn spells, so you could collect more treasures off of other people's turns if you wish. Life's Legacy. The beauty about Roxanne is that she does this Golos effect where she pays for half of her commander tax on ETB, and she does it on combat. So if you are able to see combat with this, you almost don't even care if she should die in combat, because you'll just cast her again and get another meteorite, which is what you want. Killing this is a feel bad for your opponents. They are only giving you more what you want, and that's more meteorites, so you can get to the late game and cast a big X spell or do some of the other things that I'm going to show in this deck down the road. Because you don't care about your commander dying, I don't include any protection spells. I don't care for Lightning Greaves or Swift Boot Boots. I welcome people to kill it.
Come on, come on. Kill me, I'm here, kill me!
I want another ETB trigger, which is why Life's Legacy is in here. It's another efficient card advantage spell. Sack my commander, draw 4 cards, probably recast them if you float your mana beforehand. Crackle Power, this is another X spell finisher. 5 times the amount of X to each ship to X targets. The meteorites, the treasure package that you're just gonna be stockpiling up should be enough for you to finish people off with this thing. Spiteful Banditry. ETB, you deal X damage to each creature. Whenever 1 or more creatures die, you make a treasure. Again, this operates very similarly to Magda in that you'll get a treasure token every time something dies. Only once a turn though. You get something obviously once this hits the table, and then subsequent meteorite plays or single target removal that I have in this deck, or other board wipes. I run a lot of board wipes in this, so I want to keep the board as empty as I can for easy attacks, and so I could get additional combats without any kind of resistance. You make a treasure and keep stockpiling. Rising of the Day. Legendary creatures get +1/+0, and creatures you control have haste. I included a couple haste enablers in this deck because giving something haste multiple times does nothing. I made sure that they give an additional benefit of some kind. That way it's not a feel bad if you draw both. You get some kind of advantage from having 2 in play if you really wanted to. Mechanized Warfare. This makes your meteorites 50% stronger. It adds another damage to them, so you'll be doing 3 instead of 2. Draconic Destiny. If you want to build as a mana sink, you could also do it that way. I include one of the best ones because for a colorless mana, you give your commander fire breathing, and it has flying and haste and extra punching power that could be a finisher. And the other beauty about this card is if the enchanted creature dies, you get to bring it right back to your hand and put your opponents in a very tough situation again. Rhythm of Wild makes your creature spells uncounterable and gives your stuff Riot, which is a choice of giving something haste or putting a +1/+1 counter in something. That's not bad at all when pairing with Rising of the Day. Pick the +1/+1 counter, and then you get a super stat buff and uncounterable plus haste. Pretty sweet deal. Omnath, Locus of Mana. Because you're going to be tapping your token mana producers for double, you could stockpile it on Omnath if you tap them for green. Hopefully no one kills Omnath, but if someone were to kill, you could, in response, tap down your meteorites or your treasures and stockpile the mana, come back around, recast without losing any value, or the big mana sink play that would finish people off. Myth Unbound. This serves as a second half of reducing your commander cost. I've always been looking forward to playing this. I just haven't had a deck to play it in. For each time you cast your commander from the command zone, it costs 1 less to cast. And since Roxanne puts a rock into play on ETB,
I will pay no tax.
and every time your commander dies, you also draw a card. Aggravated Assault. Now, this is a combo piece. You could either go for a really nice value play and just sink all your mana into this and get a lot of combats in, a lot of meteorites. Or if you pair this up with Bear Umbra or Nature's Will, you will have infinite mana to sink back into Aggravated Assault and kill people that way. What you do is you attack the most vulnerable person, get a bunch of rocks, plink off the other opponent's stuff, make them open, and then as soon as they're dead, your other opponent's board should be empty enough for you to focus the next weakest player and go down the line. Panharmonicon is particularly powerful with Roxanne because not only do you double the ETB trigger of your commander, but you also double the ETB trigger of your meteorites, because most people forget that Panharmonicon also cares about artifacts. Everyone just puts this in here just for creatures. If you look closely, the very first word in the paragraph is artifacts. On ATV, you'll make 2 meteorites. Each meteorite will do 4 damage instead of just 2. You'll have 8 damage to dish out. Momentous Fall. This acts just like the Life's Legacy, only it's an instant and 2 mana more, and you gain life equal to your commander's toughness if you want to go that route. Leyline of the Tyrant. This is the red version of Omnath. Instead of sinking mana for green, you sink it for red, and then you stockpile. Only Leyline's slightly better. Should Leyline die with a ton of red mana on it, you get to deal a bunch of damage or something, so you're getting a little bit of extra value when compared to Omnath. Relentless Assault for an extra combat. Second Harvest. This could be a bomb in the right scenario. If you have a lot of meteorites in play, you could make a ton more because it effectively doubles your token count. And if you have, say, I don't know, 5 or 6 meteorites in play, you make 5 or 6 more, and they come in untapped. And you have a lot of mana to play with and or deal a ton of damage with. Magmatic Galleon. I've always had an interest in trying this out, so I'm going to give it a shot in this budget deck. On ETB, you deal 5 damage to an opponent. Whenever one or more creatures your opponent controls dealt excess non-combat damage, you create a treasure. If you're scaling up your meteorites in some way, doubling their triggers, what have you, this non-combat trigger to make a treasure seems very probable. The other beautiful part about it is they come in untapped, so you could use that treasure same turn. Port Razor. This is one of your extra combat spells that's on a body. That's why I wanted to go more of a control shell, is because most of the extra combat spells were getting kind of pricey. So I have to play the more cheaper ones, and the reason why they're cheap is because they're easily dealt with. And this one's easily dealt with just blocking. But if I'm consistently clearing the board with my board wipes or with my single target removal or my meteorites, I should be able to consistently crack someone and get an extra combat with this. Return of the Wild Speaker. This is my bigger card advantage spells. Hopefully I have something bigger than a 4/3 in play, but that's still not a bad raid. For 5 mana, I'm getting 4 cards minimally. Hexplate Wallbreaker.
Wall break inside a 4th wall break.
Extra combats, and it doesn't care about if it connects, it just has to attack. Something you have to be kind of careful about is when you can play your extra combats in conjunction with your other ones, is they care about timing restrictions a little bit. Like this one cares about if it's the first combat, you get the triggered effect, while Relentless Assault doesn't. Pre-plan your combats out if you have multiple additional combat cards that you can play. That way you don't cause a feel bad and deny yourself an extra combat, because the fine text of Magic does matter. Garruk the Primal Hunter. This is just another 5 mana draw 4 card. It's a sacrificial lamb in this deck. Wolfgar the Icewind Dale. This doubles your attack triggers. So you attack with your commander, you'll make 2 meteorites instead of just 1. Hellkite Charger. This is basically a more expensive aggravated assault. It's not as good. It's pretty taxing, even though it has haste. You could pay 7 mana for a total of 13. It may sound unrealistic, but since your rocks and treasures will tap for double, it's pretty good chance. And then you combine it again with Bear Umbra or Nature's Will, you'll untap your lands and do it again and again. The difference between this and Aggravated Assault is nicer in that you can activate post-combat. This has to be activated pre-damage. Just keep that in mind when you try to go for your infinite. Hellkite Tyrant, I have not had a win with a Hellkite and Tyrant probably ever, so I'm gonna see if I could do it. I think I have a pretty good shot with how many meteorites and treasure themes I have in here, since my intention are to stockpile stuff for my big turn. This would be a good payoff for that. Inferno of the Star Mounts. This is a mana sink and a payoff for my big mana. I also have never pulled this one off where I pump it up to 20, deal 20 damage to someone, and then have the trigger go off where I deal 20 damage to another target. I want to see if I could do it. The cool thing is he also can't be countered as flying in haste. Everything a sweet finisher needs. Fire Emancipation. Whenever a source you control would deal damage, you deal triple. So it turns your meteorites from 2 damage to 6 damage per ETB. Sounds really fun. This turns your meteorites into win conditions, basically. Bootlegger Staff. Lands you control have tap to add a treasure token. Since your treasures tap for double, you effectively turn your lands into tapping for double, or anything else that doubles your mana. You have to pay a pretty penny monetary-wise and CMC-wise. You get that for dirt cheap, not only CMC-wise, but also in monetary value as well. Hellkite Igniter, this is another finisher, Flying Haste. For 2 mana sink, you can give this creature plus X plus O till end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. There is no limitation for how many times you can activate that. You can most likely one-shot someone. City on Fire can make a lot of mana. You almost don't care that this has Convoke, but this is another Fire Emancipation for 2 additional mana. Turn your meteorites into 6 damage instead of just 2. And that brings us to the end of I hope you all enjoyed. I have done 2 techs previous to this, and I'm going to do at least 9 more. And I'm also going to feature these decks on the channel in terms of gameplay, just so you can see how it performs. It might be cheap, but it packs quite a powerful punch. Everyone take care now. Subscribe for more. Bye.